All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to today's Thursday. It's the 29th, and we finally got our dump, right? We finally got a price movement, which means we have a lot more to talk about. The market's definitely a lot more exciting, even if it's a move down in the wrong direction. If you were wanting price to move up, right? Kind of the setup that I've been waiting for now for 2 weeks, just never got it. But hopefully, kind of the thoughts this week and as well as last week, covering why buying higher in some circumstances is going to sound weird. Once you get used to it, when you can recognize that we're consolidating, maybe you don't have a good read on what happens in the very short term, right? So choosing a level that would, what's the confirmation that you would like to see to get long, rather than just being a coin flip of, I'm betting 50-50 it goes up or down, right? And sometimes waiting to buy higher actually does kind of protect you and is actually lower risk than buying at kind of a lower price. That's a strange concept at first, but hopefully that helped out. That's the level that I've been waiting for. Just didn't get my buy. Right. Yesterday I talked about kind of why buying up here protects against what we're seeing right now, which is a dump through range low. Not something I kind of want to be sitting in a long in. I'm going to go over the Bitcoin thoughts here now that we are below the range low. This is a little bit tricky because now the one fundamental that I'm sure you're going to start seeing on people's timelines, I brought it up today on Twitter, but you're probably going to see it a lot more, is CME futures expiration. And first of all, what that even means, right? Why people talk about that. And then the narratives and the things that get attached to that are, price always dumps before expiration, and then right after, it can pump, right? Whales manipulating so they can, close their shorts if they were short on expiration. All those different thoughts. I'll kind of share my thoughts there. What the data shows very clearly, so you don't have to rely on some random thought or what happened last time or cherry picking data. Very clearly what it shows. And then also I'm going to clean up the data right after this. I'm just going to get out the video first and look at weekly returns. I talked to a couple of futures traders and they said that the positions get rolled well in advance of 1 or 2 days. So weekly will give a better picture. All right, so I'll share my thoughts there, at least preliminary what the data shows, what the usual narrative is. What used to, I think, be a cleaner relationship in this year, I think it's gotten a little bit more skewed. So let's look at Bitcoin. General thoughts this week. You guys know the picture. I think everyone is way too familiar with how I've been trading, right? I'm just going to draw these lines. They're not trend lines, but it gives a very clear picture of ever since, now it's been 2 weeks straight since we got back down to this 9,500, 9,600, right? Beginning of August, it was a great buy. 2 weeks in August, it was a great buy. Last couple times we've been around this level, I just didn't want to play it. And it's because I think this level gets less actionable. Even if, right, we would have bounced and this would have been a nice trade, I just wanted to sit it out and buy up here. I'd rather buy here. I would still rather buy here. If we move up, right, that is still that's going to remain a good buy in my opinion. If we get over that technical level, I still like a buy above 10.8, 10.9. Obviously, it seems way farther away now than it did, but still, if that setup comes, right, obviously we'll cover it. I think there's a lot of time in between now and then. But if we do get up there, nothing changes there. Right, so a very quick review of the week. That's the setup I wanted all week. It's the setup I wanted all last week. We just didn't get it. And the nice part is, even though I didn't get to take my Bitcoin trade, I avoid kind of now sitting in the long as we're down. I guess only down a few percent today, but since yesterday, down 6 or 7%, $700. So on the bright side, I wanted to buy higher. I didn't get to buy higher. And now there's maybe potentially an opportunity to buy cheaper or waiting out. And I'm going to kind of talk about the decision there. As we look at the last 2 times price has dumped below this range low. Right now looking at the bigger range. This has been the smaller range we've been in, obviously, for the past 2 weeks. But really, ever since, I've said this a million times, I'm going to say it again, ever since June, we've been in between 12.9 or 13K and 9,600. That's just been the cheapest Bitcoin's been. There has been 2 time periods. Both of them were like maybe 24 and 48 hours where Bitcoin actually did trade below this 9,600. You can remember the last one was, this one actually was around futures expiration. This was the end of July going into August, right? And then right after, for me, it was my best trade of August for Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin being able to reclaim, and when I say reclaim, all I mean was price broke down from this range low, right? Or this area that has acted as support, this area that, even if it isn't support, right? It's just the cheapest that Bitcoin's been. If Bitcoin is confined to the range, 9,600 is the bottom of the range, when we get below the range and we reclaim it, price breaking below, getting back above, that's a reclaim, and then wanting to get long, right? That was a very nice play leading into August. I think that could be an opportunity again, but before I get into that, that is kind of the situation we're in right now. So we've had 2 time periods. One was maybe 24 hours. This one was pretty much 48 hours, where for me, I was just sitting here waiting and saying, look, do we dump lower? If we reclaim, I would love to get long. I think that we're in a similar scenario. I'm going to kind of talk about why. Right, so if this is our range low, get all the words out of there. Not only of the smaller range we've been in for 2 weeks, but also for the past 2 or 3 months, right? We have 2 time periods where we've been below 9,600. We're below it again, which generally, initial thoughts before I think about what I expect to happen or kind of a setup, that shows weakness, right? Every single time we get down here, yes, these 2 times, it turned out to be kind of the best buy. It would literally have been kind of the perfect buy. This, to me, it always increases the likelihood that I think we do see further downside. If you think about, this would be a breakout to the upside. To me, this is a breakout to the downside. So it doesn't mean we have to follow through. As you can see, last time there was no follow through, right? We actually reclaimed and it turned out to be a really good long. But each time that we do get down here, I'm definitely not smashing buy. Like I said, it would have been the perfect buy, but just because it is for my system, for how I view kind of the range low, how I view the support, this is a breakdown of that level, and I do think the likelihood goes up a lot that we do now see more downside. The only reason I'm hesitant towards saying, look, I have high conviction that we see more downside is because what happens tomorrow. And it's an event called CME Futures Expiration. You've probably seen a bunch of people talk about it. If you haven't, you're going to see it pop up in your timeline. It pops up every month, every few months, especially for the quarterlies and the biannual, right, on June and then December. All it means is, right, if there's a CME futures contract, just like on BitMEX, for anyone that trades on BitMEX, there's expirations for those contracts. So they'll start trading, right, and then eventually people that, those contracts close out. They expire. The interesting thing with the CME contract, and ever since they started, right, pretty much when Bitcoin topped, was the volume still isn't that large on CME. But there has been a lot of speculation that, going right into expiration, sometimes there's, a pretty much selling pressure or a dump leading into expiration, and then right after they expire, price kind of pops up again. If you go back to 2018, I think that relationship was a lot more clear. I'm just going to highlight 2018 really quick, what that looks like. Zoom in so you guys can see the numbers. Like when they first started, the first expiration, I think that relationship was a lot more clear. And once again, after this video, I'm going to share the weekly with you guys so you can see the actual numbers. But instead of having to rely on like a guess, or instead of relying on a weak narrative, here's the actual figures. 2 days before expiration, you can think about this being 2 days before, this being the day before. Obviously, expiration, there's not a return because it's the actual day. And then, 1 day after, what's the change in Bitcoin? 2 days after, what's the change in Bitcoin? It's pretty clear June, July, going into August, September, relationship gets messed up. But then going back to November, relationship gets messed up a little bit. And then December, I think it's a little bit more clear. The trend definitely was, negative returns or selling 2 days out, 1 day out, and then expiration, obviously. And then the following days, price was propping back up. Right? This is a very small time period, so maybe it's not as helpful, but this is the general picture if the numbers aren't making sense there. Right? This is kind of what it had looked like if you think about how Bitcoin trades going into that expiration. Right? Negative return, 2 days out. So if this is expiration, what's the return from 2 days out towards expiration? Over all these time periods, it was definitely negative, less negative, obviously, 24 period out, 24 hours later, slightly positive, and then 48 hours, still slightly positive, but not as much. I'm going to do weekly. It'll give a much better picture. But that was kind of the general trend we saw in 2018. In 2019, I think you saw something similar, although it starts to break down a little bit. And it really kind of breaks down, I think, in June, so 2 months ago, and then last month as well, where returns, it was still kind of selling pressure, not so much in July going into it. But then after, what we have here was there wasn't kind of buyer stepping in after expiration. So maybe the relationship broke down. We'll see on the weekly. But historically, I think the relationship exists. I'm not sure so much if it's actionable. right? So once again, I'll get a much clearer picture, but if you start seeing people saying, we have to pump because expiration happens tomorrow, maybe we do. There have certainly been one or two times where that was the case. Going back to August of last year, definitely the first expiration. I think that's what made people think about it. If you think about November, but there's also been times where it's like, I'm not really sure you could draw that much of a conclusion. This one, the relationship still exists, even though it's negative. So I'm just pointing this out because you're going to see a ton of narratives. You're going to see a ton of suggestions. Maybe it does. I'm just not sure it's statistically significant enough yet to say, look, I do think it's negative going into expiration. I'm just not so sure, based on what happened the last two times, that it's actually, quite positive right after. I'll get the weekly. We'll get a much better picture. But just something to think about there. So that expiration is tomorrow. The one thing that also lines up with expiration of a lot of these is the monthly close. You can think about the daily close and the weekly close and the monthly close as whether or not you're a price action trader. I think those levels are significant. So a lot of traders, and me included, I think I'm going to wait and really see what happens at expiration tomorrow. But general thoughts here as we get below this range low support. Right, we've done it twice before. Here's the first time. Here's the second time. This to me is weak Bitcoin. And it doesn't make me want to smash buy. Yes, it was literally, 1 and 2, the two best buying opportunities you've had for Bitcoin in the past 2 or 3 months. But I also think the likelihood now goes up substantially that we actually do see a breakdown. This to me is now a daily close below. Well, daily hasn't happened yet. But if we do close below here, this would be a daily close below the range low support. I don't view that as too attractive, in my opinion. I would much rather, if you want to think about kind of now the ideal setup that I've wanted, for the last week and for the 2 weeks, once again, using what worked so well at the beginning of August, I think is going to be helpful. This to me would be the ideal setup if I want to get long again, rather than trying to buy here, because maybe it is the best price. You can think about it as kind of, what we just had a day or two ago, almost the exact same scenario. I would much rather play the reclaim. This was the best trade for me in August. And it's not like a random, I just wanted to swing long and it turned out to be the best play. I really like playing the range reclaim, right? If price breaks down from an area which should lead to continuation of the downside, and it actually leads to price reclaiming, right, or closing back above this support, like we had in August, that shows strength for me. That shows that this maybe was a fake out, and that we can actually move higher, right? Once again, if we do get back up here, this is kind of how I would set that up, just like I set it up in August, right? If we reclaim this area, where am I wrong? Here's just a rough idea. As long as price stays now above this support, use this area as support, I want to be long. So my stop would be back below that. Think about it over here. Right now, how today and tomorrow and this weekend could play out as we end the month and go into expiration where things can get a little bit silly. Rather than, it's the exact same thought process yesterday. I really do hope that some people were able to be patient here and not get burned by just coin flip. Am I going to be right? Am I going to be wrong? Rather than that, choose the condition where it actually fits your system. Choose a condition where your probability of going right actually goes up. You manage the risk to the downside. You don't get caught buying something and just praying we move up, trying to catch a falling knife, right? You actually have a condition that improves your chance of being right. For me, that's a reclaim or any daily close back above this 98.50 area. What that would look like, right? I would obviously want to execute as close as I can to here or in here, right? And if we do get this reclaim, if price does move up, retest here or have a daily close above here, right? This is generally how this would look. I'd want to be getting long, close to there, up to 10K, that'd be fine with me. And I'd be wrong. I use this roughly because I prefer to use 4-hour daily closes, right? It's not going to have a hard stop set there, but I would like, as long as, let's say this condition happens. Let's say I get my reclaim or I get my close back above 98.50, right? That happens. Tomorrow we bounce back up and we close up here. To me, that would trigger a long. And I would want to stay long as price continues to close above this 98.50 or as long as price continues to close above this 96.80. I'd give it that much room, right? So giving it that 2, 3, 4, 5% even, depending on where we close, and looking to run it up, obviously much higher, but kind of the first area I'd be targeting Smallest area I'd be targeting would be the 10-4 area, but really looking for that 10-7, 10-8. Nearly the exact same trade that we had end of the month in July going into August. And that was just the best swing. Not only did it allow me to kind of buy the range low, but it also, you get to wait, not have to kind of take the gamble of buying the first move after we consolidated for that long, right? Not having to catch this knife or gamble of, look, do we continue downside? Is this the perfect buy? You can play that. Some guys are very good at playing that counter trend game, right? Looking for kind of that ultra high RR. It's just not my style. I would much rather kind of wait for what matches my system of, look, if we can reclaim this level, it's a high time frame support, it's the range that I trust, get back above there. Right? That to me is ideal. Looking to run the exact same setup. Until that happens, to me, even though it's worked the past 2 times buying down here, it's not, I'm not going to play that just yet. I think that the likelihood goes up substantially that we do kind of have continued downside. And right now, the other reason I'm looking for this to be reclaimed is now that we've broke through it, right? I view this as resistance. And I'm not going to buy as we're moving back into resistance and expecting selling pressure here. If we get through it, right, with either a close above or a retest here, this is where I want to be getting long. Right? Hopefully that makes sense for kind of the Bitcoin outlook. I'm sure there's some people that are saying, why don't you want to get short? Why don't you want to hedge? You can. For me, the way that I kind of play that is just not being in a trade. So whether that means sitting in, I know some people like to sit in Bitcoin, some people like to sit hedged in cash or in Tether. I kind of have my Bitcoin on an exchange and just looking to buy more. Right? For people that margin trade, that makes sense. For people in spot, right, sitting in cash or Tether can work as well. That's the outlook for Bitcoin. I think that things only improve or only get positive if we are able to reclaim this. And I really want that to be on a daily time frame. I really want this close up here or the retest up here. It's the exact same scenario. You can study how you would have played there. Kind of reverse, think about, what were the signs here? What would be a trigger that would help you get long? For me, I like to use very simple things. Daily 4-hour close. Some people, those closes mess you up. But be thinking about that. And even if you don't play that the same way, I do think at least viewing this area, which has acted as a really nice support being broken, I think you have to kind of consider that, right? And right now, I am viewing 96 up to 98 as selling pressure. If we get back above, once again, that is a very good sign, and that would want me to trigger to go long. But until we're back above, this feels like a much higher likelihood that now that we continue lower. We're back below this resistance. It's an area that's, it's worked out twice. I'm not so sure you can kind of bet on the exact same event repeating 3 times. If it happens, I'll execute, but it's not something where I'm like guessing and trying to predict, look, it's going to happen again. Exact same thought as this week, last week. Waiting for my condition, not only would that kind of be a great chance to get long, right? Just like this one would be a great chance to get long, it'd be a high probability, high conviction setup for me, but it also hedges now by not jumping into the trade or not taking the trade until kind of my setup's there. You hedge against the chance, against that risk of price just continuing lower. If we do continue lower, I'm sure there's some people saying, look, where do we go if we continue lower? There's been a lot of guesses of like 8,500. I know the whole market's waiting on 8,500. So many schools of thought there of like, if everyone's waiting for the same number, we never get down there. Sometimes if everyone's waiting for the same number, we blow through. I don't spend too much time thinking about sentiment, stuff like that. I think it gets really skewed. There aren't that many people on Twitter that are actually trading ideas. Some people just kind of throw ideas out there. So if I had to pick it, not based on sentiment, but just based off historical levels that I think would have significance there, right, where do we drop to if price actually does continue to move down? I do start looking at 8,400, regardless of whether or not everyone's looking at that, right? Quote unquote, everyone's looking at that. I do like 8,200 as well, kind of that whole range of, bear with me here. Taking all this out of play, on our move up, this to me was kind of that really important resistance. It flipped to support barely. Right. So if I have to pick kind of the most significant daily level if we do move down, right, I do think, right, if we do have this continuation down, sure, it could be 9,000. But to me, 82, 8,500 makes a lot more sense if we continue down. That's kind of the next area where I'm actually excited for buys. So the whole thought process is, and I've talked about this, we talked about this when priced at 8,200. It's the exact same thought process I had when priced at 5,400. It's always the thought process of when there is a retracement in a bull market, right? I have one condition that would show me momentum is back or that momentum has returned. So what does that mean? Explain it like I'm five. The condition that, if price starts moving up, how do I get on board? This week and last week, it was if we move up above 10.8, 10.9, I want to get on board because I think we continue much higher. Now, the new condition for me is, look, if we move back above 10.850 or back above 98.50, 9,900, I want to get on board because I think you move much higher. So I have a scenario where if we do start moving up, I know how to get on board. I know where I'm getting on board with the expectation that price is actually going to continue higher. If that doesn't happen, I get rewarded just by being patient of if this condition isn't met, or like this condition last week, how do I get rewarded? Well, I get rewarded as price continues to move down. And if price continues to move down, then I'll kind of wait for that next high time frame support. So patience, and now moving slow, kind of time's on your side. If the downtrend, if the retracement continues, every single day you get rewarded for moving slower. If we do move back up, it's not a scenario where, oh shit, I didn't buy the dip and now I have to watch price run away. No, I have a condition for if we do move up, when am I getting long? Why am I getting long there? I'm getting long there because the expectation is if we reclaim this, the probability goes up that we continue higher. Right. So that's the thought process for Bitcoin, at least for the long side. I personally am not going to play a short going into the close tomorrow. I think things can get a little bit silly as well as for the monthly close. But bias aside, I do think that even though these last two times worked out and price was able to reclaim and move higher, I think that every single time that we're below this range, the probability goes up. This is resistance. I have to view it as resistance until we reclaim, meaning I'd rather be patient and either get my scenario that we reclaim or let things drift lower and get rewarded for being patient. That's the thought process for Bitcoin. On the alt side of things, what this is doing in the market, you guys know all too well that alts have been nearly dead. And it was my thought all week that the alt window wasn't here, right? Even with a Bitcoin that was weak, ADA, EOS, none of these were actually moving up. Now that Bitcoin's dumped, we have a potential new alt window next week. I feel like I say this every single week, but we do. I'm not going to jump into it. It's the exact same thing as Bitcoin. And this week is maybe the first week where I haven't had a trade Monday now through Thursday. Maybe it shows up tomorrow, but it's one of those things where, and I also really like this new format because I'm not kind of incentivized just to fire in a new idea every single day. I know that doesn't, some people love to trade every single day. Some people are fine taking a trade once a week. For me, it just 100% matches my style to rather wait for kind of the high time frame setup and then play that theme that lasts for a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week. There might be an alt window. It would be supportive of an alt window if Bitcoin continues lower tomorrow, right? If Bitcoin continues lower, doesn't give me this setup, then I think, okay, Thursday or Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, then I think, maybe we can jump back on the Tron play. Maybe I can jump back on the Ripple play, which is starting to do well. Maybe I can jump back on ADA, right? And maybe these things, next week, we once again have a chance, not this week, but last week, I ran them and could only get 3 or 5%. Maybe this next week or this weekend, we can actually run them for the full 10, 15% that I wanted to in early August. So that opportunity is also right around the corner. If there's Bitcoin downside, I would prefer to play it by playing Bitcoin weakness, alt strength on the back of that Bitcoin weakness, right? That's kind of the thought process there that's also right around the corner. So for me, Monday through Thursday, it's crazy. It might be boring to some people. How can you not take a trade all week? It's just, it's a strategy that works for me. And I want to pass along the high time frame trend thoughts that hopefully guide, even if you are a smaller, time frame trader, scalper, whatever it is, that does take 1, 2, 3 trades a day, having the higher time frame outlook and understanding is massively going to help you. So anyways, that's the thought with Bitcoin there. Reclaim, I love. If I don't get my reclaim, if I don't get a close back above 98.50 tonight, tomorrow, going into the weekend, I'm not going to get long. I would rather kind of wait for, I don't care if Bitcoin does this, I don't care if Bitcoin does this, I benefit either way. If we get back above, I know I can get long. I expect the chances of continuation higher. to be very good, I should say, right? Just at the beginning of August. If Bitcoin moves down in this scenario, okay, that's fine. And then I can move back into the mode of, look, maybe I have an alt window here. I probably have 2 to 3 days to play it. Maybe Bitcoin actually does retrace another $1,000. And I think that would give these alts enough room to make their 10, 15, 20% push. So still 2 big things on the horizon. Monday through Wednesday of this week was the lowest volatility we've had in a long time. And it might have just kicked back in, meaning for me, Friday, Saturday, Sundays is looking like the time now that I can get active, but we'll see. Anyways, guys, that is the full Coindesk Daily. Hopefully the video helped out. I appreciate you guys sticking with me when the volatility is low. I know a couple of people have been frustrated with this week on if they did take a trade, it just didn't work out. Now they're realizing they should be patient, as well as there's some people that have been patient and said, oh man, that's just too hard for me. For me, being patient, moving slow, and waiting for that setup works. But you have to kind of find what works for you. That's the high time frame thoughts. That's my high conviction setup for Bitcoin. If I don't get it, I wait for lower. If we do go lower for Bitcoin, I'm not just going to sit on my hands all weekend. I think that this scenario would lead to very nice moves potentially for this ADA, for EOS, for all these coins to actually make it their 10, 15% that I wanted a week ago. Right? So 2 different scenarios there that both lead to nice setups. Either Bitcoin reclaims and I can play Bitcoin. If Bitcoin continues to look weak and dumps, I'm going to try to play the ADA, EOS, and Tron and all these other ones for the 10, 15%. Right? That's all I have on the market, guys. That's a full Coindesk Daily. Have a good Thursday, and I will see you tomorrow. All right? Take it easy, guys. Peace.